Stand by SOT1.
Standing.
10 seconds. Ready, rolling. Ready, SOT1.
Ready.
In 4, 3, 2, 1. Roll in.
From legendary Uncle Studios in beautiful Southern California, welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters, the central location for you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. And now, here's this week's edition of Work Comp Matters. It is December 10th, 12 noon straight up. Welcome to another edition of Work Comp Matters. We, of course, brought to you by mancavepodcasting.com. If you want to do your own podcast where all you have to do is talk, 818-357-4120. All you need is a smartphone or a computer, and you can be anywhere in the world. All you have to do is talk. mancavepodcasting.com will manage, produce, direct, get your podcast live on social media, and then in the cloud forever. The content is all yours, and it's for one low fee of $50. Not 50 a day, not 50 a week, not 50 a month, not 50 a year. It's a one-time fee for $50, and your podcast is managed, produced, directed, live streamed, and into the cloud forever. And if you don't want to do your own podcast, but all you want to do is take advantage of over 600 shows that we have on mancavepodcasting.com. It is completely free, no obligation. We're available to you 24/7. So you can go on to mancavepodcasting.com. There's 600 shows. We've got Work Comp Matters. We have Steve and Monica. We have Live Well. We have the Ginger Shades Experience, a risque soiree, and more coming up. 600 shows, no obligation. Just click the link. They're completely free. And, it's lots of fun. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Steve Appel, and I'm joined, of course, by the madman across the water, the socialist voice of reason, Mr. John Scalia. And he is in Munich, Germany. I am in Los Angeles, California. And we talk about those stories that we believe interest you employees, you employers, and of course, we haven't forgotten about you damn independent contractors. Stories in the news today. Wartime trauma hits close to home for scholar of dementia. We also have stories involving coronavirus, the new Omicron variant. San Francisco Chronicle charts show that current COVID trajectories versus past surges in California and the Bay Area. Bay Area winter surge arrives even as Omicron numbers stay low. Los Angeles County may be at the start of a winter COVID-19 surge. COVID-19 cases rising in Los Angeles County. From the Sacramento Bee, Sacramento sees post-Thanksgiving increases in COVID cases. Young Latinos are dying of COVID at high rates in California. Unvaccinated residents 5 times more likely to catch coronavirus. Tearful patients and nurses share memories. From Politico, President Biden health team ruled out free COVID tests for all over cost and logistics. And from San Diego, the San Diego County detects its first Omicron cases. We have those stories and even more for you on Work Comp Matters. And of course, we are podcasting live on Clubhouse. If any of you listeners want to ask a question, you're more than welcome to raise your hand. We'll bring you up to stage, and we'll hopefully be able to answer your question in a somewhat intelligent fashion. But I'm now going to turn the show over to my longtime co-host. He was a 40 to 45-year attorney practicing workers' compensation employment law in beautiful Southern California. But about 7 to 8 years ago, he moved out to Munich, Germany, and now, of course, is actually living the socialist life, Mr. John Scalia.
Would you like me to do the first story?
John, I would love you to do the first story. And by the way, a note to Scott, I figured out what the problem was. And of course, it was user error on my end. Yes, John, please do the first story.
Okay, wartime trauma hits close to home for scholar of dementia. Juan Mayer was a postdoctoral fellow studying the experience of caregivers for those with dementia in 2012, when her research took a very personal turn. That year, her mother, a Vietnamese immigrant, began to show signs of dementia and paranoia that seemed to be linked to the trauma she had suffered during the long war in Vietnam, when bombing raids often drove her to hide underground and she lived in fear of communist troops. Growing up as a Vietnamese American, Meyer, I think we can assume that's probably not her Vietnamese name, had noticed a reluctance to address mental health issues in her community, issues she pursued in her studies. She conducted her doctoral research at UC Davis on disparities in mental health care among Asian Americans. Now an associate adjunct professor at the Alzheimer's Disease Center at UC Davis Health, Meyer, 45, is leading an investigation into the link between trauma and dementia in the Vietnamese community. With a $7.2 million grant from the National Institute on Aging, the 5-year study, which could begin recruiting as early as this month, will follow more than 500 Vietnamese elders in Northern California, measuring how early life adversity, trauma, and other factors correlate with memory and cognition. Now, I am not going to make fun of dementia or Alzheimer's or any of that. My mother had it. It's nothing to laugh about, okay? But I am going to refer back to a U.S. Senator back in the early 60s and 70s by the name of William Proxmire, who was a liberal Democrat, but a very fiscally conservative guy. And he used to give out an award called the Golden Fleece Award, meaning the government was being fleeced for something, to study something that was really ridiculous. And I would think that this $7.2 million grant would qualify for the Golden Fleece Award. Now, why do I say that? Well, let me ask you a question. First of all, let's notice a little politics in the way this thing was written. It implies that she was hiding from bombing raids and hiding underground because of communism and the Viet Cong.
Check.
Well, you know what? The only people who had to hide underground were the people we were bombing, because the Viet Cong didn't have an air force. Okay, so the reality is we were the ones doing the bombing. So let's assume that this anecdotal relationship between war trauma and dementia comes to be true. What is going to be the result of this scholarly study? Is the United States going to say, "Oh my God, war produces Alzheimer's, so we're going to give up war. We're going to follow, we're going to have a pacifist code and a pacifist constitution"? It's obviously absurd. So the point is, it's nice for this lady to find out why her mother has dementia. I understand why she may be curious as to what caused it, but the reality is it's $7.2 million of a boondoggle for a study that's not going to produce anything that results in any concrete action.
And from thank you. And from a study regarding Vietnamese and Vietnam, we are going to gas-powered lawn equipment, believe it or not. In 2024, it will be illegal to buy new gas-powered lawn equipment in California. California regulators voted Thursday to ban the sale of new gas-powered leaf blowers and lawnmowers starting in 2024, and portable generators by 2028, the latest step in the state's aggressive effort to reduce harmful pollutants. The restriction applies to homeowners and businesses and also includes gas-powered weed trimmers, chainsaws, and power washers. It does not ban existing gas-powered equipment, okay? Now, John, I understand that California and the United States wants to reduce gas power emissions. They want to reduce and eliminate fossil fuels. No one's talking about the fact that in China, the emissions and the CO2 from steel producing companies exceed everything in the United States by 400%. But John, you know what concerns me? When I am sleeping on a Saturday, or for that matter, a Sunday, and it's 7 or 7:30 a.m., and I hear these leaf blowers and uh, gardening machines, I couldn't give a crap about whether or not they're operated by gasoline, diesel, or electricity. I want them to put a silencer on the damn thing. I'm more concerned about them not making any noise than the emissions that go into the atmosphere. Now, I realize I'm being selfish. I'm getting to be old. I'm concerned about my sleeping. But John, do you have a question, comment, or concern? Am I like totally out of left field or what?
No, you're not. Actually, it's funny. Possibly they may violate noise ordinances, but just in case. I mean, I lived for a year and a half in Laguna Beach, which, as you know, is a beautiful part of the world and a great tourist area. And we had a cop down there who actually hated the noise that motorcycle riders would make when they went through town. And he had a decibel machine, and he would stop them, and he would see how many decibels their motorcycle was emitting. So the blowers may actually be violating noise ordinances too. So I think it's absolutely, they are annoying. They're a nuisance. They're annoying, and they are polluting. And by the way, everybody is talking about China. America is always talking about the pollution coming out of China because China has surpassed the United States for a number of years now as being the number one polluter in the world. People are aware of it, and people are trying to and the Chinese are aware of it too, because as much as they are a complete dictatorship, even in a complete dictatorship, your people prefer to breathe. And so the Chinese, which have a very substantial middle class in China now, are under pressure from their people to provide clean air and a clean environment, because that's not a political issue. I mean, if you want clean air, you're not being anti-communist, okay? And so they can demand clean air, and they are. So even the Chinese government knows that they have to do something about that.
And John, thank you very much. We're going to get back to our stories of the day in a moment, but you're dialed into Work Comp Matters, and we are podcasting live, not only on Facebook Live, but also on Clubhouse. I wanted to welcome Chrissy to Clubhouse. And Chrissy, if you wanted to ask John or myself a question about current events that affect employees, employers, or of course, independent contractors, current events, go ahead and raise your hand. Also, John and I will stick around for like 5 minutes after the show, which will be going on for about another 15 or 16 minutes. But we are brought to you by mancavepodcasting.com. We've got over 600 shows in the tank. They're completely free, no obligation. You can go on to mancavepodcasting.com and check them out. If you want to do your own podcast where all you have to do is talk. And by the way, Chrissy and I did a Steve and Chrissy late night, and I'm certainly looking forward to doing that again sometime, but I'll have to speak with her about that after John and I finish the show. So thank you very much for joining John and myself on Work Comp Matters. And John, if I'm not mistaken, you've got the next story.
Coronavirus. Unvaccinated residents 5 times more likely to catch coronavirus. This is from the Orange County Register. The Orange County Healthcare Agency reported 295 new cases of coronavirus on Thursday, December 9, increasing the cumulative total since tracking began to 316,070. About 67% of Orange County residents, 2.27 million people, have received 2 vaccine shots, and 595,000 of those also have received a booster. Still, coronavirus is rising again in the county, particularly among people who aren't fully vaccinated. The 7-day case rate for unvaccinated residents is 24.2 per 100,000, while the case rate for vaccinated residents is 4.5 per 100,000. The chart below, well, you can't see the chart here, so I'm not going to read that. The average daily number of new cases in Orange County was 255 per day as of November 30, up from 204. There were 13 more people with confirmed cases of coronavirus reported in OC hospitals on Thursday. So basically, this is once again showing that despite the fact that there are breakthrough infections, the best protection you can probably have, other than being generally healthy and not having comorbidities, is to get vaccinated. Steve.
This time last year, the worst COVID surge of the pandemic was in full force in the Bay Area and California, with cases rising sharply each day. This summer, Californians saw another wave of cases as the Delta variant tore through the country. Now, coronavirus case rates have risen 37% in the Bay Area and 30% statewide just in the past week, according to data analysis by the San Francisco Chronicle. Though they are still less than 1/3 of their levels 1 year ago, the highly mutated Omicron variant is raising concerns worldwide. And while only a handful of Omicron cases have surfaced in the state, experts say more are sure to follow soon. And, John, my comment on this story is, the Omicron variant appears to be more contagious, more transmissible, but I have still not seen a single Omicron case that has either severe side effects, hospitalization, or death. Not one, John.
Okay, the next story is from the East Bay in the Bay Area. Cal's Justin Wilcox should have admitted team's COVID failure. Okay, Justin Wilcox is the football coach at the University of California, Berkeley, and he makes almost $4 million a year. That's right, that's no typo. When you're making about $4 million a year to coach a football team at a public university, you should be able to rise above the fray, recognize we're in a pandemic, and put the health of students and the community ahead of winning games. You should set an example for your young players, own up to mistakes, and strive to correct them. Sadly, that wasn't the tack taken by Justin Wilcox, the Cal coach whose team a month ago was confronting a serious coronavirus outbreak. Rather, he was apparently upset that the university hadn't defended him and the team against health officials who had raised legitimate criticisms of the football program's COVID safety practices. Who's fighting for us? He asked. The scene was a video call Wilcox and key university health officials had with parents of the players concerning the outbreak. The first positive test had been detected about 2 weeks earlier. Well, again, this is just an indication that this guy actually has an anthropology degree, but it's an indication that we don't have nuclear physicists coaching American college football. And here's a guy earning, despite the fact that he's not a nuclear physicist, he's earning between $3 and $4 million a year. And his reaction is, oh, you're not defending us, even though the health department thinks we were negligent, and that's why we have this incredible outbreak. What's wrong with you? Really, the question should be, what's wrong with you, Justin Wilcox? Steve.
Exactly 2 weeks after the Thanksgiving holiday and its associated gatherings of family and friends, Los Angeles County is seeing a resulting increase in COVID-19 cases. The public health director said on Thursday, that's yesterday, calling the trend a possible start of yet another winter surge of infections. In an online briefing, Barbara Ferrer, who's not a medical doctor, said the increase was visible by December 1, when the county's 7-day average daily number of new cases topped 1,000, a 19% increase from the previous week. She also noted a resulting increase in hospitalizations, with the daily number of COVID patients nearing roughly 600. And as I said earlier, and I'll say it again, I'm not so concerned about how many people are diagnosed with COVID-19. I am concerned with the resulting side effects, with the increased hospitalizations and death. John.
This is from the LA Times editorial board. The Supreme Court can't pretend that overturning Roe v. Wade would be anything but political. The Supreme Court heard arguments Wednesday in the most important case on abortion rights in 3 decades. And by the direction of the comments and questions, the court could be headed toward a major, if misguided and dangerous, scaling back of constitutional protections under Roe v. Wade. The state of Mississippi is asking the Supreme Court to either overturn the landmark 1973 ruling on abortion or allow states to pass pre-viability abortion bans. On Wednesday, conservative justices seem to be looking for ways to scale back those rights without making it seem political. What would be wrong with a 15-week ban on abortion? Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr. asked Julie Rickleman of the Center for Reproductive Rights, representing the sole abortion clinic in Mississippi. Why is 15 weeks not enough time? Justice Amy Coney Barrett wanted to know why the existence of safe haven laws that allow women to relinquish their newborn babies without questions wasn't enough protection for women who would be burdened by parenthood. You know, I want to talk about something which nobody else will talk about because it's America and nobody will talk about it.
Oh, John, I'll talk about it, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you know, they're ignoring the fact that the U.S. Supreme Court has got 6 Catholics on it, and the Catholic Church has said from time immemorial, abortion is murder. And so you can talk about politics all you want, but the basis, the underlying thread here is religion. And of course, nobody in America is ever going to say anything about that because that's off limits. And America may have free speech guaranteed in the First Amendment, but nobody wants to use it. Steve.
Separation of church and state, baby. In California.
Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead, John. Go. John, I knew that would trigger you. Go ahead, John.
Yeah. No, the separation of church and state is exactly what's not happening. What is happening is the church is being made into the state. The Catholics are saying, you know, we've been taught from childhood that abortion is murder, and we're going to scale back this law, which was passed when the Supreme Court had a bunch of, God forbid, Protestants and one Jew, which thank God we got rid of him, on the Supreme Court. So no, this is not about the separation of church and state. This is about the state becoming the church.
And John, when you comment on the state becoming the church, when I said separation of church and state, I was actually agreeing with you 100%. In California, younger Latinos are dying of COVID-19 at much higher rates than their white and Asian counterparts. Younger Black people also are dying at higher rates, but the disparity is starkest for Latinos. As more people get vaccinated, pandemic restrictions lift, and the economy rebounds. The family of the young Latinos who died will feel the loss for decades to come, if not just the grief, but also the long-term financial hardships. John.
Well, this is interesting from the LA Times. Your socks are made with plastic and could be loaded with dangerous BPA. You know, I looked that up because it doesn't talk what it is. It's bifencyl something or other. Anyway, it's a chemical. When we think about fossil fuels and climate change, we don't think about the clothing we wear. But the reality is more than 60% of our clothes are made with synthetic textiles derived from oil. Textiles like acrylic, nylon, and polyester. Producing the synthetic fibers has a profound impact on our climate. It is a source of global warming. Big Oil fears that demand for fossil fuels is flattening as the economy moves toward electric vehicles and renewable energy sources. Its plan is to replace some of the profits historically made from selling oil and gas for fuel with profits made by selling oil and gas as feedstock for increasing amounts of plastics, fertilizers, and other petrochemical-based products. As a result, plastics and their health impacts are increasingly ubiquitous. Like fish in water, we are surrounded by petrochemicals we cannot see. Through months of testing, we at the Center for Environmental Health have learned that even small clothing items like socks made for babies, children, and adults can be loaded with BPA, up to 31 times the safe limit under California environmental law. Studies have shown that BPA can be absorbed through your skin. Socks are worn for hours at a time, so it is concerning to find such high levels of BPA, particularly in those made for babies and children. BPA mimics human hormones, the chemical messengers that tell our bodies what to do. Hormones tell a child when to go into puberty. They can tell a woman to go into menopause at age 25. They can tell cancer cells to grow. hormone mimicking chemicals can cause nearly every negative health outcome you can think of. So there you go. And the one thing I learned is in practicing workers' comp, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Steve, is that whenever you have a chemical exposure case, it's extremely difficult to prove in America because the statistics generally are well hidden by industry.
Yes, I completely agree. But on the subject of clothing, and not so much socks, but John, when it comes to pants and shirts, the first thing I look for is, are they wrinkle free? And you're never going to get a shirt or a pair of pants that's 100% cotton that's wrinkle free. You got to have some of those petroleum products in it, but that's for another show. Next story. The Biden administration opted for a controversial plan to pay for at-home COVID-19 testing through private insurance after officials concluded it would be too costly and inefficient to simply send the test to all Americans for free. Three administrative officials told Politico the decision to forego a European-style approach to testing, which hinges on the government buying and widely distributing rapid tests, has sparked days of backlash, putting the White House on the defensive over its newer plan for containing the virus. John.
Well, I'm not really surprised. I mean, you've heard me rant and rave about, the difference between the rest of the industrialized world, which has socialized medicine, of which providing those tests is part of, and what goes on in the United States. How liberal politicians in California made the homeless crisis worse than ever before. Editorials and other opinion content offer perspectives of all the disturbing societal trends that have been normalized over the past few years. It is homelessness that stands alone as the most morally outrageous and shameful. The visible daily reminder of the collapse of one of the government's most basic responsibilities is a blight on California and the policymakers who created the problem and simultaneously demonstrate complete incompetence in addressing it. 1 in 4 homeless people in the nation lives on California streets, and most of California's homelessness problem is the result of policy failures in Sacramento. That's why no other state has anywhere near the problem that we do. Next year will mark 10 years since the elimination of the most powerful tool cities had to house low-income residents. Redevelopment, as it is commonly known, allowed cities to designate areas in their communities for future development opportunities and keep a portion of sales tax revenue that would be generated for future projects. Cities could then borrow against this revenue stream with the commitment to also set aside hundreds of millions of dollars a year to build affordable housing. So there you have it. And it's, the reason they say that it's liberal politicians who made it worse is because Democrats have been in charge of the California legislature for as long as I can remember.
And that is going to do it for the news. If you're hanging out in Clubhouse and want to ask John or myself a question after the podcast is over in about 90 seconds, you're more than welcome to come on up. John, any closing thoughts or burning desires before we officially close the show?
Well, no, other than I certainly would comment on the Julian Assange case, but I'm going to post a Facebook thing. Also, by the way, on mancavepodcasting.com, you can listen to me and my son talking about sports.
Exactly.
Which we will be doing 15 minutes after this podcast.
And that is a fantastic show because that is J&J, that's John and Jameson, father and son talking about sports. It is a beautiful thing. But I want to thank you all very much for tuning in to another edition of Work Comp Matters. We are brought to you by mancavepodcasting.com. 600 shows. All you got to do is click, and there is no obligation, no sign up, no follow. We are at your disposal 24/7. If you want to do your own podcast, all you have to do is talk. It is, we will manage, direct, produce it, get it streamed live into the cloud forever, all for one low fee. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on Clubhouse. We'll be sticking around for a few extra minutes on Facebook Live. This is the end of the show. So for John and myself, Scott Walton of Legendary Uncle's Studio, everybody at Man Cave, we will see you back Monday live for another edition of Work Comp Matters. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.